Trudeau got summoned down to Mar A Lago. Trump said, come on down, Justin, you want to talk about the tariffs? Come, let's have dinner and we'll talk. So Pierre Poilievre was asked a kind of a half gotcha question. How is the media? Like, oh, are you going to go down to Mar A Lago and talk to President Trump if he invites you? And he says, I haven't been invited. I'm not going to talk about that. And he walks away. And then that evening, President Trump invites Justin Trudeau for dinner and they have a 3-hour tete-a-tete. Very interesting. But there's lots to talk about that. I've got a whole series of tabs on that. The UK moves a step closer to medical assistance in government contracted death. So you can call up the UK government and say, I'd like to die, and they'll help you out, just like in Canada. And I wonder if they will get money from organ harvesting, just like Canada. $50 million for Ukraine. It's money laundering. It's money laundering. I've got RFK to explain why it's money laundering. So it's money laundering. And there's a Christmas concert in Alberta that was canceled because not everybody celebrates Christmas. The invasion is ongoing and the attack on Christmas is vicious. There's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we'll start with the invasion ongoing, I think. And table salt gets us kicked off with the government of Canada has set aside $1.1 billion with a B to house refugees over the next 3 years. That's a lot of money that maybe we shouldn't be, I don't think we should be spending that kind of money. Keir Starmer has said, this is a coordinated plan. Keir Starmer has come out and said, expose the whole plan. And I'll get to that in just a minute. But it's very, very interesting that on one side, Keir Starmer is saying, oh yeah, this has been done by design. We're being invaded and so on and so forth. He doesn't say invaded, but you get my meaning. And on the other side, Canada's doubling and tripling down and making it rain all over refugees and migrants. So weird, right? It's a really, really weird juxtaposition. Here we go.
Asylum seekers arriving in Canada has surged post-pandemic, and with Trump's deportation promise, it's not expected to slow down. We're getting a closer look tonight at just how much it will cost to house people. CTV's Colton Prale reports.
For weeks, this Ottawa Sports Centre has been home to protests over plans to build temporary housing for asylum seekers. The site is one of two that will house sprung structures, temporary, customizable tent-like buildings where hundreds of newcomers can stay for up to 3 months. Some already exist in Toronto with another planned in Peel region.
So we're really concerned about, number one, the structure, but after that, the site selection itself. Where do people need to be? Somewhere where they can better integrate into a larger community.
Shelters across the country are overwhelmed. At one point, asylum claimants made up nearly 70% of those staying at the Ottawa Mission.
We had 45 to 50 people per night sleeping in our lobby waiting area in plastic chairs or curled up on the floor because we had no beds, no mats. We were already at overcapacity. This has gone on for over a year.
Asylum claims have more than doubled since 2019, and 2024 is projected to surpass last year's record high. This week, new parliamentary budget estimates show the climbing cost of housing asylum claimants. In the past 7 years, the federal government has spent nearly $960 million on its interim housing assistance program. Over the next 3 years, it's budgeting an additional $1.1 billion.
Theft. That's $1 billion of theft that goes to non-citizens for nothing. Why are we doing this? It doesn't make any sense to me. Here is what Vancouver looks like. Bruce says Vancouver looks like India now. This is the airport. Sadly, they're mass arrivals and not mass deportations. Look at the escalator coming up. It is, well, very, very interesting. This is very visual, but it looks like a very different Vancouver than the one 10 years ago when they lost that Stanley Cup. Ryan says, this is downtown Kitchener, Ontario. Anyone remember growing up in Canada and seeing anything like this? How about prior to 2015, Trudeau has failed Canadians in Canada in immeasurable ways. This is an absolute disgrace. This is disgraceful. I can't begin to convey my disgust at every level of government that's allowed this to happen. Absolute disgust. These people should resign in absolute shame. They should come out and say, we've failed. We clearly don't know how to do our jobs. We clearly deserve to be having consequences and accountability for this. And I'll start that by resigning my position now in favor of having somebody who knows how to fix this come in and fix this. These people at every level are incompetent and or compromised by China. I don't know who, but somebody other than somebody who's got Canada as their priority. Here is Kitchener, Tent City. This is down by me. This is King Street. The Waterloo Catholic District School Boards, like their offices are right around here. This is like Duke Street and King Street, I think, downtown. He gives the exact address, but like downtown Kitchener is pretty small, and this is disgusting. Here we go.
Hey guys, Angry Canadian out here. I'm actually in Kitchener. I believe it's Kitchener. Yeah, it's Kitchener, not Waterloo. We're at King Street and Victoria Street, and one of the large encampments in this city. There are tents set up everywhere. This is Trudeau's Canada. You will own nothing and be happy. You have people building huts. This is what Justin Trudeau has done to our country. He has ruined us. He is by far the worst prime minister Canada has ever seen. He is by far worse than his father, Pierre Elliott Trudeau. So again, this is the encampment in Kitchener at King Street and Victoria, just outside of the downtown core, not too far from the Via Rail station.
So I remember seeing Hoovervilles when I grew up, and I didn't think anything like that could happen in Canada, right? And here's Canada Proud. Pat Hardy Elementary School in Whitecourt, Alberta is facing backlash from parents after canceling their annual Christmas concert because not all students celebrate Christmas and they want to be inclusive. Well, it's not inclusive when you cut out the majority of people and stop celebrating their culture, right? Like, oh, we're going to have an Eid celebration instead. Sorry. This is London. Apologies, it just started playing. This is London, and in England tonight, United Kingdom, occupied by terrorists chanting genocidal slogans. Who's funding this? Somebody is funding this. Keir Starmer came out and said, you know, this invasion thing is happening on purpose. Here is Giger, and he says, holy cow. The UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer just admitted that Western leaders have been running an open borders experiment. This happened by design, not by accident. Immigration policies were reformed deliberately. It has been immigration policies were reformed deliberately. Yes, it's been a failure. They pretended it wasn't happening. It is happening, currently happening in Canada. Somebody's QBing this, and Starmer's saying, yeah, somebody's doing this on purpose. Here we go.
What the British people are owed is an explanation. Because a failure on this scale isn't just bad luck. It isn't a global trend or taking your eye off the ball. No, this is a different order of failure. This happened by design, not accident. Policies were reformed deliberately to liberalise immigration. Brexit was used for that purpose, to turn Britain into a one-nation experiment in open borders. Global Britain. Remember that slogan? That is what they meant. A policy with no support, and which they then pretended wasn't happening. What the British people are owed.
He's not being honest entirely. He's blaming Brexit. Michael
that purpose
gives us a little bit of color on this. I don't know why these Twitter things are starting to play right away. It's kind of annoying. Michael says, in the video below, you will see Keir Starmer addressing a clear issue in the United Kingdom and attributing the problems related to globalism to Brexit. Despite the fact that Brexit was initially intended to restore national sovereignty, the significant influx of unvetted migrants and asylum seekers began during the Labour administration of Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, continued under Tory leadership David Cameron and Theresa May, and reached its peak under Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak. This trend has persisted under Starmer's leadership as well. Everyone has participated in creating this disaster. The Tories are not conservative and have behaved like Labour during their recent tenures. Starmer's argument would be more compelling if not for the fact that France, Ireland, Italy, Germany, the Netherlands, and Spain have also engaged in the same strategic error of allowing mass immigration into their countries at the same time as the UK. And he forgot to mention Canada and the US is being invaded viciously from the southern border and the northern border as well. And the northern border has quite a lot of terrorists. So that's interesting as well, because I live there. Right? So, I mean, not exactly on the border, but still, you get my point. Greg says, in case you didn't know who's in charge of the global refugee sponsorship scandal, the program in Canada that's being paused, CTV News says Canada is pausing private refugee sponsorship applications until 2026. Private sponsorships are, I decide that I have an extra $30,000 or $50,000, or my church group raises an extra $30,000 or $50,000, and we can sponsor a refugee. Or somebody calls me up and says, "Hey, do you want $30,000 to $50,000 to sponsor a refugee to come into Canada?" And no questions asked, I'll write the check today. And they say, "Oh, sure, we'll do that." And then the church group does it, and bingo, bango, bongo, you've brought people in, and all you need is money and willing suckers, not marks, me, marks like. I've identified you as somebody who's a sucker, right? Marks like that. So like con man, right? But this person's conning Canadians to sell out their own country, which is just not great. So here's the Partners Program, and the Global Refugees Sponsor Initiative, GRSI, is a joint initiative led by the Government of Canada, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, the UNHCR, the Giestra Foundation, and if you ever listen to Amazing Polly, you'll know what the Giestra Foundation is, and the Open Societies Foundation, and the Shapiro Foundation, and the University of Ottawa Refugee Hub Pathways International, which is money laundering your all the international student money into all of this kind of stuff as well, and Robert Porticus and Robert Bosch Stiftung. So it's interesting that George Soros' Open Societies, the Giestra Foundation, United Nations, all of these people are funding this one vector of attack into Canada. And that's interesting, right? And they've shut that down. But there are these people who are funding this kind of stuff. If foreign people were funding an invasion into Canada, would that look like tent cities? Would that look like canceling Christmas concerts? Would that look like Indian students refusing to leave? How about Indian students inciting other Indian people to take over Canada? Here is exactly that going on.
Indian army to come here to Canada and storm those fucking temples. Yeah! Come to Canada and storm the fucking Sikh temple.
So there you go. We'll leave it there. I don't think that he's saying come to Canada and storm. He said storm one other place, storm the Sikh temples, and then at the end he's saying come and, what does he say? Indian man telling Indians to come and take over Canada. So he says, come and take over Canada, storm and come over, take over Canada. And that's not great. If you were being funded to invade another country, would you get a bullhorn and do that maybe? If you felt protected? Yeah, probably. And Maxime Bernier is responding to this CTV News headline. The headline says, quote, "We came to Canada with a dream for a good life. International students in Canada could face deportation." Maxime Bernier says, "So sorry that your dream was broken, but for us, you're a nightmare. Good luck fixing your country and trying to have a good life there. So go back to your country and live there and do what you want to do there, but don't do it here because this is our country and we don't want to participate in this whole invasion thing anymore." Ron Butler is responding to Hanif Bryant, and he says, "Data doesn't lie. Toronto and Vancouver are unaffordable. Home affordability of 25 cities in Canada and the US." And Ron gives us some color on this. He says, "How totally unaffordable are Toronto and Vancouver? Less affordable than everywhere else in North America. When we talk about average income families buying their own homes, nowhere in North America is worse than Toronto and Vancouver." Pretty incredible. So the price in Vancouver is $842,000 is the average home price. That's surprisingly low, right? It's very, very low. And the gross median household income, $66,000. Good job. Good job, Vancouver. Los Angeles, people make a lot more money in Los Angeles and a lot more money in San Diego and a lot more money in San Francisco and New York. Wow. Canada's really struggling. Montreal's average salary is 61K too. We're just stuck in the 20 teens, eh? And we're not growing at all. I've got some data on that to talk about as well during the financial tabs, but it's pretty wild. And a lot of our capital is being washed out of the country, going to fund wars, Israel, Ukraine, all of that kind of stuff. And so it's not staying in Canada. We're not being enriched by our own productivity, and our productivity is tanking as well. So it's not good. Lori Goldstein, let's talk about the GST rebate, which is terrible. Lori Goldstein says a 2-month GST holiday and a check for $250 to working Canadians would be fine if the federal government had a $6.3 billion surplus this year to pay for it. Financing it with more public debt, on the other hand, is robbing Peter to pay Paul, right? And yeah, so yep, definitely. Somebody went to the grocery store today and he's like, oh, I can't wait to see how much tax I'm going to save on this big bill of meat and milk and eggs and essentials that I have to buy at the grocery store. And so he went to buy it. And all of the items that he bought didn't have any tax on it. So he would save nothing. He would absolutely save nothing. If he waited until the GST holiday to buy all this stuff, he would save nothing. It would be no reason to wait. Just go buy it now because there's no tax on it already. So there you go. Isn't that wild? Tax holiday. It was a ploy, and I still don't know if the House of Commons is open or closed because of the speaker saying that we can't move on until these papers are produced. But the Liberals and the NDP passed a motion that said we're not going to talk about that anymore, Raymond Ding Dong. And so I don't know what happens next. So we'll find out on Monday, I guess. We'll see. I've asked people, and one person who was just an anon on the internet said, no, it's done, it's over. And I was like, well, I'm pretty sure that the NDP said just one day to get this whole thing done, like the NDP or the GST holiday done, and then we'd be back to the whole filibuster thing. But the thing they passed that I told you about yesterday prevents that, I think, but I don't know. We'll see. Like, I didn't hear anything from the speaker, but maybe I missed it. Anyway, John says, I'm getting tired of writing this, but I guess you're all cutting and pasting the same messages that Katie Telford gave you anyway. There is no GST on groceries. The vote buying scheme disproportionately helps the wealthy. You're using borrowed money to fund this. Taxpayers will ultimately have to pay it back. This creates significant hardships on businesses, especially small retailers who can least afford it. So Sean Fraser's, partying it up and saying, oh, we're having, he says the holidays can be expensive, so we're providing a little help to Canadians. Taking the tax off groceries and everyday essentials for 2 months is going to make a difference. No. Nope. It was a scheme to get the House of Commons open back up, and they're trying to get through this filibuster in order to get C-63 passed. That's what I think. Jagmeet Singh says Pierre Poilievre and his conservative MPs voted to keep the tax on your groceries and kids' diapers, but it gave a billionaire a tax handout. Why are we taxing kids' diapers? Like, what? We shouldn't have taxes on groceries. We shouldn't have taxes on food. We shouldn't have taxes on energy at all. We should do it by tariffs. There are other ways to fund the government. And if all we're doing is sending all the money to Ukraine anyway and spending it on foreigners and housing foreigners, I don't want to pay taxes. Like, what the heck? If that's all we're doing with it, we're not enriching the country at all. Like, we're just importing foreigners for no reason, and we're paying for that. Taxpayers are paying for it. Jagmeet Singh says they don't give a darn about you, and I don't think that Jagmeet Singh is arguing from a position of power. I don't. Although somebody asked Justin Trudeau, I think it's here. I thought I had it here. Somebody asked Justin Trudeau about the axing the tax thing. And he says the excuse for not taking the carbon tax off is that the carbon tax is actually a wealth transfer tax. It's a wealth moving around situation where 8 out of 10 Canadians receive more back than they put in, right? So they're justifying it as a stimulus package for poor Canadians from rich Canadians. Here it is. I did have it. It's 30 seconds of Trudeau, so 30-second Trudeau warning. Sorry about this. Here we go.
I think this tax holiday is going to help Canadians. Why don't you put a holiday on the carbon tax as well? price on pollution, the carbon tax, puts more money in the pockets of 8 out of 10 Canadians. People across Ontario in the middle class get back more every 3 months from the Canada carbon rebate than they pay on the price on pollution, on the carbon tax. So it's an affordability measure that's also driving down emissions and spurring innovation. So it's good for Canadians, and unfortunately Pierre Poilievre wants to take away the Canada carbon rebate.
Don't mention that carbon tax that he also wants to take away, right? Cheryl says immediate thorough audit required by Auditor General of CRA practices, policies, personnel. It's becoming patently obvious there's no stewardship. If anything, it appears it's riddled with fraud. So this is not GST related, but like broader tax implications. So the more complicated that you make the tax code, the easier fraudsters have to abuse it and to abuse loopholes. And apparently nobody checks anything. Nobody checks anything at all. Like, what? So CRA was duped again. Oh, those fraudsters. But don't worry, censorship to the rescue. Nobody's allowed to talk about this, so it'll go away. People will forget, right? CRA duped an Ontario construction tax credit scheme. The Canada Revenue Agency is being hit again with revelations it failed to detect a scam, one so obvious that according to an insider, or two insiders, a simple Google or corporate registry search would have prevented it. But this time, there's a twist. According to sources, the agency learned earlier this year that it wrongly paid out tens of millions to scammers who used phony businesses to claim Ontario tax credits to renovate or build commercial facilities. The CRA processed the tax credits on behalf of the Ontario government, but the sources say that the federal agency was responsible for verifying the claims and in 4 years has never checked any of them. The claims were generally all accepted as filed and paid out without review, the CRA briefing notes reveal. According to the sources, the Fifth Estate Radio Canada are not identifying the sources as they are not authorized to speak publicly. Who's on the hook for all of this waste? All of which raises the question, if the CRA was so easily duped into paying out bogus provincial tax credits, who incurs the losses, the Ontario or federal government? Minister of National Revenue, Marie-Claude Babou, I'm not getting that right, but whatever, did not respond to an email from the Fifth Estate with that question. She has defended the CRA repeatedly in the past weeks in Parliament over revelations that has lost hundreds of millions to scammers, stating that the agency's fraud detection systems are robust. Well, obviously not. In recent years, fraudsters have hacked into the tens of thousands of taxpayers' CRA accounts, sometimes pretending to be tax preparers, H&R Block, to obtain fake refunds through a variety of schemes. The CRA declined to answer questions about how it was duped again, this time by failing to check basic information such as whether the renovations ever happened or if businesses were even real. In order to preserve the integrity of the tax system, the agency said in a statement, it does not release specific information related to our monitoring strategies that could jeopardize our efforts. We can't tell you about anything that we're doing to prevent the fraud that is rampant in our system. Next question. Great, awesome, super good. Here's more discussions on censorship and the broad censorship infrastructure landscape that's being erected around us. Here is Adnan. He says, this digital stuff is absolutely key because without it, they can't enforce anything. It's important because, one, if you don't comply, they can't really make you. And two, if you don't comply, you are an example to other people who will then also not comply. So it's a double-edged sword, right? Like, somebody not listening to them is the absolute worst. It's the worst thing that could happen to them because it shows that you can survive ignoring their ridiculous edicts, right? And so they hate that. So they want to be able to get rid of people and unperson people who don't listen to them. So there are real consequences for not listening to them. Because right now, if they say, oh no, there's a pandemic, you have to wear a mask, and you're like, F you and your mask, and you don't die, it looks bad on them, right? It looks like they were Chicken Little or The Boy Who Cried Wolf or, you know, any of those children's stories that we should remember in times like this, right? Here is censorship and the importance of censorship. Here we go.
The biggest fear that the World Economic Forum has is that there are going to be people that will not comply. Their biggest fear is your fight for freedom. Their biggest fear is that you will make individual decisions for yourself and you will not follow their orders. So this digital stuff is absolutely key. Because without it, they can't enforce anything. Without it, they can't mandate that you do something. Without it, they can't control your life. So I don't care if you're talking about carbon emissions and what's safe and effective as far as they are concerned. I don't care if they're talking about an experimental injection, a series of injections, whatever they may be, and what's safe and effective as far as they're concerned. This is not about those individual things. This is about the desire to control you from the outside in. And if they have a digital process whereby they can restrict your movement, your behavior, and your decisions with the click of a button, you are done. The biggest...
Yeah. Yep. So they desperately want their control so that they can take you out at the click of a button. Here is another woman, and she says the World Health Organization just passed, kind of in secret, through other means, not open means, a different type of control mechanism, and she explains it here. I think that this is legitimate. It's very interesting. Here we go.
Let me just read you something really quickly about what is inside of this pact that is now being accepted by 193 nations around the world and equally open-armed accepted by our current administration. Everyone, it says that this is the power structure, fully digital and maximized for the control of the masses. Everyone will be expected to have a biometric digital ID that marks them not just as citizens of an individual country, but as a global citizen. So anytime you hear global citizen or anytime you hear sustainability, think that this is an egregious thing that's happening at the level of the World Health Organization and the United Nations. Anyone that has a dissonant opinion will be labeled as misinformation, disinformation, or malinformation and memory hold. Perpetrators for unapproved information will be fact-checked and punished by the system, which will be operated and enforced by artificial intelligence. Punishments will include being locked out of one's bank account, being unable to make certain purchases, unable to get on an airplane, on a subway, drive on public roads. This is the future, according to the world's self-appointed overlords at the United Nations. These are unelected bureaucrats that are making decisions about our country, our sovereignty around the world. Nothing could be more important at this point in time than to get prepared, have water, food, digital access.
Water, food, and digital access. Got to make sure you can check in on X to see what's going on. You know, digital access is super important. It's interesting. Trump and his family were debanked between presidencies, and that's interesting. His wife was debanked. His son Barron was debanked. They couldn't put money into certain banks. And this guy's saying part of the control grid is
you don't have to threaten to take
de-insurantizing you. Basically, it's a different version of debanking, but there's no laws that govern it, right? And so they're going to try and deperson you through mechanisms that are like online terms of service. You won't be able to access Facebook. You won't be able to access other certain things, and that's going to be a pain in the ass. So you're going to get your digital ID, and they're going to turn the screws until you get your digital ID. The same thing they did during COVID, except a worse excuse, right? It's for your safety, comrade, not from a disease, but from vague online harms that might somehow get you, unless we know exactly who you are and what you're doing all the time, right? Like, I don't know, man. Here's this guy talking about this to Joe Rogan.
You don't have to threaten to take away somebody's kids. You just you threaten to take away their insurance. You don't threaten to take away their insurance. It's not government insurance that's being taken away. The same thing has happened in the insurance industry. It's consolidated down to a small handful of companies. They're super regulated. If the government doesn't want you to have insurance, you're not going to have insurance. And there's no constitutional right to insurance. So there's no appeal process. We're back to the debanking thing. And so that happened in banking. That's been happening in internet, in social media generally. It's been happening in many other sectors. And then it's happening specifically in AI. And what you have in AI is you have a set of CEOs of some of the big AI companies that want this to happen. Because again, their big threat is that we're going to fund a startup that's going to eat their lunch, right? It's going to really screw them up. And so they're like, look, if we could just take the position we have and lock it in with government protection, the trade is we'll do whatever the government wants. Wow. And if you assume the government is controlled by, people who want to censor and punish and cancel their political opponents, that's going to come right along with it. And so that's why when these AI systems come out, like 9 times out of 10, they're tremendously politically biased. You can do this today. You go on any of these systems today, and you just you start asking really basic questions.
Gemini's the best example of that, right? When they had multiracial Nazis,
the black Nazis.
Yeah.
Once again, we're back to the Nazis. Yes. So it turns, according to Gemini, Hitler had an excellent DEI policy.
Yeah.
Now, in reality, he did not. And it's important to understand that in reality he did not. But yeah, Gemini happily threw up Black Nazis because they programmed it to be biased. They programmed it in a political direction.
Yeah, and it was programmed in a political direction. And like the BBC's in the same political direction, Netflix is doing the same stuff, making television and media programs that reimagine history and push one narrative over other narratives and things like that. It's all part of the same lockstep control mechanism that we're living in, unfortunately. Dana White talks about the election being won online, and one of the quotes is, "This whole country feels like somebody hit the reset button. The traditional media is dead. It doesn't hold the influence that it used to hold. The two most hated people in the world right now are the media and the politicians. Nobody trusts them and nobody believes them. This election was won on the internet." Yeah, it's interesting. It's almost 2 minutes, so I think we're going to just keep going because we're already 30 minutes in and I've got lots more to go. But I think that his point is interesting, that the legacy media destroyed their credibility so fully that people would rather just listen to people from their garage than listen to the mainstream media. And it's funny because in Canada, there are all sorts of podcasts that kind of pretend to be somebody like me or somewhat like me. Like there's the Breaker in Alberta, and there's a couple other, what was his name? Hurley Burley or something like that. And there's all sorts of other people who are like insiders, and they talk to people and they have big guests, but they don't talk about anything that really matters. They don't actually talk about anything. They don't question anything. They don't wonder anything. They don't risk anything. They don't worry. Not that they don't worry about being wrong, but like sometimes I put theories out there that, maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong for sure. But it seems like the official line is so manufactured or manicured to the point of, it's pablum, like here, just put it in your mouth and that's all you're getting, right? Like that you have to question it. It's ridiculous what's going on. Like looking around the whole world and seeing like Germany, France, the United States, all of these other places suffering this invasion, Keir Starmer, all the rest of it. And then, people in Canada saying, oh, well, the real problem is white supremacists and the alt-right. Well, actually, the real problem is the coordinated invasion of our country. But, right? And like, is that risky to say? But those other podcasts aren't talking about that. And that's what I mean. Like, it's bullshit, right? They're pretending to be a podcast that's trying to be hard-hitting and talking about the stuff that actually matters to people, but it isn't. There's not. And there's a whole bunch of them, and they're crap. They're just crap. And it's all because they want to replace people like me with edgy podcasts that are controlled. But the whole point of it is that I'm not controlled, and I'll say whatever I damn well please because it's my effing show. And so they hate that. They hate that. So, and F them. I don't care. They can hate that all they want. Here's this guy talking about how Twitter 1.0 was built to shadow ban people. It was all built to silence people, and like it's still built to silence people. I'm silenced. My shows get like 1/10 of the audience that they get on other platforms. And on the other platforms, I'm massively censored too. And I'm not trying to say, oh, I'm censored. I'm happy with how I grow. I'm happy with how my show goes. I think it's fun that I have kind of a small little audience that is always like boiling underneath the surface, right? I don't know that I could be splashy and like, well, Canada famous, right? I don't know that I could be like that. But I think that it's interesting that the censorship does play a role in keeping podcasts like mine, edgy, down, and promoting crappy podcasts that really I don't think resonates with people. Greg was making fun of Wyatt Claypool yesterday, and like it was hilarious. Like hilarious. I don't know if Wyatt views me as a competitor, but he keeps like trying to attack me, and I just laugh at him, and I think it's funny. Anyway, censorship. Twitter 1.0 is censorship. Twitter 2.0 is censorship too. Here we go.
I went to Twitter when I got a call one day from someone at Twitter basically saying, Elon wants to meet you. Can you get here tonight? It was about 3:00 on a Tuesday or something, Tuesday or Thursday. And I called everybody I knew who had a private plane. I was like, somebody's got to get me over there. Nobody could get on. I jump on a plane. I get to Twitter at about 12:30 a.m. This is like a week or two after he bought Twitter. And he comes out, there's all these people there. It's just such a buzz, right? And he comes out, it's about 12:30 a.m. His eyes are bloodshot. And and he's clearly tired, right? And you've met him many times now. He dresses like a normal guy. He's in like this ratty t-shirt. It's late at night, you know, his sneakers are dirty, and he's clearly been there for God knows how long. Probably hasn't slept
5 years.
Yeah, probably hasn't slept in however, right? And he says to me, he goes, Dave, I heard about what's been going on with your account. He's like, do you want to do this tonight, or if it's okay, could we do it tomorrow? It's like, this is insane. The world's richest man is basically like, can I work for you tonight at 1 a.m.? I was like, oh, it's actually okay. I'll come back tomorrow. And then I sat there the next day with a whole bunch of engineers who opened the hood of the thing. And the entire system, the entire Twitter system was built to shadow ban. That's it. Everything under the hood of Twitter was built to put filters and tags. And you said this, so now you can't see this, or you connected with that person, so now you can't connect with this person. The entire system was built that way. So Jack Dorsey, who was the CEO for much of it, he testified under oath that they do not shadow ban, but the whole freaking system was built that way. Now, he probably legally didn't get in trouble because shadow ban is not a technical term, and he may have, you know, been, I think he was just playing with the words there. But the point is, there was an entire system basically built to silence a certain set of people and promote another set of people.
Yeah,
and now,
it didn't work.
And it didn't work. So how cool is that? How cool is that?
I don't know about it didn't work. There are a lot of people with TDS. And again, there are things that a lot of people believe that are not true that are driving policy in one direction. Climate change is a good example, but there are other examples. Wars, I mean, multiple wars. Let's just send more money to Ukraine. We're going to win that one any day now, right? Like, it's ridiculous, but we are sending more money to Ukraine. The CCFR says Montana's, I don't know what position he's in. He's high up guy, Attorney General. He's the Attorney General, and he says, do you know in 2018, the RCMP were surveilling people in the United States at gun shows? And they just called me the other day, and they want to come and surveil people in Montana at gun shows? And he said, not on my watch. I hit the roof. F Justin Trudeau and his China surveillance things. Here we go.
Speaking of the ATF, I remember when, the ATF had Canadian law enforcement, so law enforcement from a foreign government operating on American soil here in Montana, and they didn't even coordinate with local authorities.
Yeah, well, it's funny you bring that up, Aaron. So my hair is absolutely on fire. That happened about 2 years ago. It happened in Great Falls. Sheriff Jesse Slaughter found out that there were Royal Canadian Mounted Police, so a foreign police force, hanging out in the parking lot at the local gun show in Great Falls and conducting surveillance on people. Sheriff Slaughter rightly told them to get the heck out of his county. Well, guess what happened this week? We had the Royal Canadian Mounted Police reach out to Montana Department of Justice. They reached out to our Division of Criminal Investigation, DCI, because they want to do the same thing. They want to come to the Bozeman gun show, and they want to come to the Kalispell gun show and conduct surveillance. I absolutely hit the roof and instructed my agencies we are absolutely not being any part of this. We do not need Justin Trudeau conducting China-style surveillance here in America. If he wants to surveil his citizens, he can conduct surveillance in Canada. I've already talked to Sheriff Springer in Bozeman, Sheriff Haino in Flathead County. When we're all in the same sheet of music here. This is inappropriate, probably illegal, and if we need to, we'll sue the federal government over this one too.
Good. So there you go. Montana's pissed for multiple things. And I said 2018. I meant to say 2022. I thought he said a few years ago, and a few years ago was 2018 in my head. So I don't know why. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.